She starred in the Vampire Diaries and became a household name. But behind the fame, she was navigating her own journey of rejection and self-acceptance. Today, she's here to talk about the happiness habits that keep her grounded. Welcome to Hack Your Happiness. Today, we are speaking with Sara Canning.
Sara Canning.
Sara Canning.
Actress Sara Canning
On the hit show The Vampire Diaries.
and a series of unfortunate events.
What are your top tips for others for handling change?
I've literally gotten roles and then needed to be traveling the next day in any new place that I shoot in. Something that I really love to do is...
You've said in interviews in the past, you didn't realize how much you could make yourself happy. So what's one moment that made you realize that?
I was going through quite a hard time in my life and it really clicked for me in...
Do you have any funny or crazy stories from your time filming The Vampire Diaries?
Oh my gosh. I mean, everything was funny and crazy. The whole thing. Like...
Welcome to Hack Your Happiness. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hack Your Happiness is a podcast designed to bring you the behind the scenes of what brings iconic individuals happiness, plus their life hacks.
I'm Mercedes.
And I'm Anastasia.
Yes, thank you for joining us. You are an iconic actress who's acted in so many incredible movies and shows, including The Vampire Diaries, which I know Anastasia and I love. So take us back. How did you get started in acting?
I actually started acting when I was 12, but I only did theater. I lived in a community in Alberta where there wasn't an active film and television industry. I grew up in Newfoundland, but then by the time I started acting, I was living in Alberta and I auditioned for a school play. And even as I was auditioning, I was sort of like, why am I doing this? I was so shy, but I was cast in that play and I just realized, wow, this is my community. I just loved the other actors, the other students so much. And it's just where I felt like I was home.
I love that so much. You know, sometimes we really have to push ourselves to get outside of our comfort zone, which at first, again, because it's our comfort zone, doesn't really feel great and we may be kind of scared, but it's really important. Yeah. And where did you grow up in Alberta? We're from just Calgary.
Yeah.
Well, I was living in Sherwood Park at the time, so right outside of Edmonton, but we had moved there when I was going into grade 6 from central Newfoundland. So yeah, I spent my teenage years in Sherwood Park.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty close to us.
Absolutely.
I mean, Alberta is not that big.
Exactly.
Alberta representing over here. Yeah.
Amazing. And so growing up in a small town in Canada, how did that impact your happiness and your lifestyle?
I feel so lucky to have grown up where I did because it was a very, very, very small town and I basically grew up outside and I'm so grateful for that now. I have such a love and appreciation of nature and of doing things outside. It's really important for me in my life to, you know, I feel sort of in tune with the seasons almost. Like it's really important for me to be outside and doing things with people I love like all year long. And I really credit that with where I grew up. We were playing outside all the time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, spending time outside is so important. I know me and Mercedes love going on like walks with our mom and dog, and it's a really nice way to kind of bond and connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because, you know, obviously growing up in a small town is such like a Canadian, I feel like everyone thinks like that's like a Canadian thing. It's like, oh, you grew up in this small town and then you like move away to pursue your job or your career. So did you have to move into a bigger city to pursue your bigger acting career?
I did. I ended up moving to Vancouver to go to film school. I did 1 year at the University of Alberta, and I think I imagined I would become an anthropologist until I was in school at the U of A and going, maybe not. Even though I actually think actors sort of are, you know, social anthropologists anyway. But I ended up moving to Vancouver just because I needed to learn how to do the film and television thing. I didn't really understand how to audition for films and for TV. So I loved the school that I went to here in Vancouver. I went to Vancouver Film School. And I think it was actually a good idea for me to move, not just to branch out into the film side of acting, but to also just experience a different realm than I had, that I'd spent my teenage years in. And it was just really good for me to gather like a broader spectrum of experience and to get out on my own. Like I was pretty young when I was living on my own. So, but it was all very formative,
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you just have to, like, again, get out of your comfort zone and kind of put yourself in situations where it's like, I kind of have to do something on my own and be independent and, have that unique experience, which Vancouver is gorgeous. I'm sure that was such an amazing experience.
Yes.
In this conversation, we talk a lot about connection and community. Anastasia and I have designed a happiness activity box for family connection, and it has 4 different card categories: talking points, fun things to do at home, outside of home, as well as crafts and DIYs, so that you can bring a small bit of happiness to your home, connect with people in your life, and have some fun. So Anastasia, should we do a little card?
Absolutely.
Let's do a DIY.
All right, making a craft helps distract our mind from our current thoughts and brings us together. Make a decorative bowl together. Use it as home decor, a fruit bowl, or for storing memorable items. And right here, there is a little QR code so you can scan it for an amazing tutorial. Well, I know that after this, we are definitely gonna go straight to DIYing.
All right, and we're gonna put it behind the mission accomplished so that we can keep track of the activities we've already completed and connect and have some fun. You can get your own for your own family or to gift someone in your life. It's linked in our show notes.
Now let's get back into the episode.
And
Yes.
another thing that I really appreciate about like your story is I think sometimes as teenagers we feel so trapped in like, if I, commit to studying anthropology or anything in, post high school, that's what I'm going to do forever. And so I love how you mentioned like you didn't feel like it was the right fit for you, so you pivoted towards another interest of yours, and that ended up leading to a lot of opportunities, which I think is incredible. And I think that's an important reminder as well, as like never say never. Like just because you're committing to something right now doesn't mean it's permanent, and that's such an important and beautiful little reminder as well.
Yeah, I think it's important for teenagers to understand that, but I think it's also true of adults, and even like the film industry can be quite a tough one. And I always have such appreciation for people who are willing to try on other hobbies and jobs. And, I think it's a constant navigation, like as we grow up, as I'm still growing up, that it's just, it's really important to keep your mind open and that sense that you're talking about of stepping out of your comfort zone and trying new things and being really willing to, to step outside of the world that I really gravitate towards people who are explorers in that way, I think.
Absolutely. And you've moved a lot as a young person, and that can be a really big challenge for like a tween or a teenager. How did you handle it, and what would you do differently knowing now what you know?
I think the best thing that I did was on my first day at a new school in grade 6, I turned around. We were sitting at these tables that were meant for 2 people to sit at, and I was sitting alone, and I turned around and there was a girl behind me sitting alone, and I just looked at her. I don't even think I said hello. I just said, "Are you new?" And she said, "Yeah, I am. Are you?" And I said, "Yeah." And we sat, and she is still one of my best friends. She just had I was in Newfoundland working, and she just had her 3rd baby while I was there. And, I'm really close with her family and with her kids. And I don't think I would actually really change anything. I was pretty shy, but I think we need to experience those pieces and those chapters of our lives in order to grow into whatever's next. So I don't think I would have actually changed anything. I'm just really proud of myself for really abruptly asking if my friend Becky was also new.
That's such a sweet story. I love that you're still close now. I think that's so wonderful. And so as you feel that you navigated that kind of change in your life well, what would you say to a teen who's maybe facing a move or is worried about that kind of transition as advice for them?
I think the most important thing is always community. And I know it can be really tough to reach out to people, and things are a lot different now than when I was 12. I did not have a phone. I had no sense of online, but I know that the online world can offer community as well, but just to not, I think it would be the same as the advice I would give an adult, like, don't be hard on yourself. Things take time. And as long as we remain open and kind, I think the right people come into our lives. And I know that that is much easier said than done, but, like, just take a risk on talking to someone who might be also sitting alone. I think that remains the same now as however many years ago that was when I was in grade 6.
I love that. And I agree. I remember my first day of a new school in grade 5. I was sitting at a table with all new people except for one girl, and I talked to them and then became friends with one of those other new girls, even though starting the conversation just like you was probably not the easiest. And then we became friends and stayed friends for a few years after that. And so I think, like, it's just like pushing yourself a little bit, but also being like, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, this is obviously a new situation.
Yeah, and I love what you mentioned about just like staying kind and open, because I know it can be really difficult. I was new out of school recently and it can be really difficult sometimes because you do feel like maybe like everyone already knows each other, and then it's a bit harder because like you're just stepping in. But it really shows that like sometimes like you just have to adjust. People will get to know you better, and it's not going to be kind of awkward forever.
Exactly.
It's just because you're new.
Yeah, it's just part of the process. It's just a little growing pain. That's it.
And so a little bit of a twist in the conversation onto your career as an actress. Sometimes acting can be kind of viewed as a non-conventional career, and you've been so successful at it. So for teens who might hesitate, many teens might hesitate to follow genuine interests out of a fear of judgment, or maybe of a fear that it's not as linear as other possibilities out there. Did you have a fear in going and transferring into film school, and were your family and friends supportive?
My family and friends were supportive. I think some people were sort of surprised when I told them that I was moving. My parents were supportive in the sense that they were also quite realistic with me, and they've always been that way, and I'm very grateful for that. I remember they helped, move me out to Vancouver, and my dad had a bit of a tough cookie conversation with me about, like, you're going to have to work really, really hard for this to actually happen for you. And I took that very seriously. I took school really seriously. I mean, I had a blast at school, but I think I've always, it's something that I feel fortunate that is naturally ingrained in me. If I decide to do something, I am 100% doing that thing. And I certainly feel like making the decision to be in an unconventional career, like on any unconventional career path, I think it's important for people to understand that you have to be such a self-motivating machine. Like there's so much rejection. I think some people kind of stumble into worlds like acting or, music, or I think people think that they could sort of dabble and see how it goes. That's fine. But you really have to be your own best friend and really believe in yourself as an actor to do it, because there are so many times when you're not doing it. And it doesn't matter how right you are for the part. There's so much rejection that I think for me, it was more that self-motivating discipline that was really important in becoming aligned with an unconventional career path like this one.
It can be so difficult when you face all that rejection, because it can be like, oh no, this is personal. They just didn't like me. Instead, maybe thinking and realizing that maybe it's not personal. Maybe it's just something else. Maybe someone else was more deserving, or something else happened along those lines.
And I love the saying, rejection is just redirection.
Absolutely.
I think that's, even if it's just like a redirection to learn something else or improve on a skill, I think that that's a much easier said than done, but an important kind of reframing.
Absolutely. And I love that like self-compassion piece, because that's definitely so important, but also like very difficult to create. So just trying to be gentle with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that being an actress involves being able to adapt to changing routine, workplace locations, seasons of busyness while filming takes place, and then times of more calm. What are your top tips for others for handling change?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think I am a big ritual person. There are things that ritual and routine is really important to me, and it goes hand in hand with all of the. I need to like drop everything in an instant sometimes to travel for work. I've literally gotten roles and then needed to be traveling the next day. So I think that's definitely affected how I am as a person. I think I'm extremely adaptable, sometimes too adaptable, I would say. But for me, one thing that I really love to do at home is I write as well, and I love writing in cafes. I love being surrounded by people as I'm working, and that's something that I do in any new place that I shoot in, because I've filmed in some really small communities in Canada, but I've also filmed on like a mountain in Ecuador and, everywhere in between, which is so lucky. But something that I really love to do is to do that sort of grounding thing of, okay, I'm going to go and write in a coffee shop on a day off. And it's a great way to feel in my routine and in my body and my mind, but while also like getting to eavesdrop on what people talk about in any particular community. It's really nice because I get a sense of the place while also being really grounded in myself. And, things like yoga and exercise and getting outside and actually being really mindful about food is really important to me. I eat all the time, and like just finding ways of grounding myself wherever I'm working in those realms is really helpful for me.
I love that idea of like going and doing some writing in a public space, like a little coffee shop or a little cafe, because it's such a wonderful way to, like you said, like connect to that environment and that place that you're visiting. But also I think it's such a wonderful way to stay consistent and have something that's like a constant wherever you are, because I think when dealing with change, whether it's moving, whether it's traveling, or even if it's just like maybe you're going through a time of change in terms of like school or jobs or relationships or whatever it is, it's very unsettling when you don't know what's coming next, or kind of are in an uncertain time or a season of your life. But I love just like having certain things that are constantly there. Like for me, it's like exercise. Like I try to exercise 5 days out of the week because that's something that's in my control. And obviously from traveling, it's not as easy, but there's other ways you have to exercise, even if it's like walking to like the store or something like that. And so like just having constants, whatever those are, I think is so essential to, feeling more in control and more relaxed in a way.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. The exercise thing. So important for me.
Honestly, when you're drinking like a drink in a cafe, it tastes like 10 times better than like when you like take it to go somewhere. Yeah. It's just like that ambiance that just makes it for me.
It's true. You're right. I'm going to go to a cafe today because now I'm excited to have a coffee that tastes even better right there.
Exactly. And so, Sara, you've said in interviews in the past that you didn't realize how much you could make yourself happy when you were younger. So what's one moment that made you realize that?
Honestly, I'm a big mental health advocate. And when I first started working with a therapist, I was going through quite a hard time in my life. And it really clicked for me in talking with her. She said, I'll never forget it. She said, Sara, happiness and loneliness are both inside jobs. And what she meant by that is that, it's really all about our perspective. It's, I guess, the same as when people talk about the difference between solitude and loneliness, and being really mindful about the time that you spend alone and feeling empowered in that time rather than feeling isolated or that, there's no one to share your time with. It's all sort of about which can be very hard to do. I know that the world is a tough place and everyone's dealing with difficult dynamics and, their own challenges, but I really every day try to, even if I'm starting to feel like a little irritated or agitated about something, like sort of to do that reframing thing you were just talking about and going, it's actually all up to me. Like I get to choose how I react to something. And if something's really difficult for me, then I go, okay, I gotta like take some time to ground. I need to lie in the grass. I need to go for a walk. I need to watch a little kid hug their mom, like I just need to kind of really bring myself back to the present. And it reminds me that I do have control in how I shift the lens on these things.
I love that. Like taking back control. I feel like so much of what we've been talking about is like finding those little pieces of control in our life.
And I think that that's what you said about being so present and realizing that like I can do certain things to feel happier is so aligned with what we talk about a lot on Hack Your Happiness, because, when you're just kind of letting your emotions come at you, you feel frustrated or you feel lonely or you feel sad or stressed or whatever it is. Those are so like overwhelming emotions, but realizing like, okay, I'm feeling really, really stressed right now. What can I actually do rather than just sitting and like being in this feeling? Like, what can I do to relieve that unpleasant emotion? And I love what you said about like having like kind of almost like a toolbox of like, okay, I feel stressed, so I'm going to do X because I feel better when I do that. Or I feel lonely, so I'm going to go and like call my dad or call my mom or something like that because I feel better when I do that and I know it. So I think that that's fantastic for anyone listening to be like, okay, when I feel this way, I need to have like a few, like 2 or 3 different kind of backups in my mind that I can go to right away to kind of, empower myself.
But I also love like what you meant about the reframement mentality, where it's like, just because you're alone in this moment does not mean that you have to be lonely. You can be, sitting in your room recharging. You don't have to be thinking about how like you don't have anyone around you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's tough. I think we're all there at some point, but I really try to just go, oh, wow, think about what I can do right now because I'm on my own, think of the daydreaming I can do.
I love that so much.
And the film industry can be very challenging, especially to someone who's young. What was an unknown challenge that you faced when you first started in the industry?
One of you mentioned earlier taking things personally, and that has certainly been a journey for me just because I worked so hard throughout my 20s, but I had to really reckon with the fact that a lot of my self-worth came from whether I was working or not. And I had to give myself a very stern talking to at one point and just say, this is not real. You are absolutely of worth, whether you're ever on set again or not. And I work with young actors sometimes, and I really try to instill that in them that, that doesn't determine whether you're an actor. It's like, get a bunch of friends together and read a play. You're an actor, it's get to class. You're an actor. And to like really step into the self-esteem required for like the stamina that this industry asks of people, to have a long career and for that long career to not be an absolute like freaky roller coaster ride. It's all a roller coaster anyway, but you kind of have to learn how to enjoy the roller coaster. And to enjoy it, you really have to be able to laugh things off. And I think that takes time and experience. So I really feel I just worked with a really lovely young actor who was upset about not getting a role in something. And I was actually up for a role in the same project and I didn't get it either. And it was great that I got to spend time with this actor and just say, it's all out of our control, all of it, like so much of life. And it becomes so much easier when you start to develop a sense of humor about it and to go, which is easier to do when you show up, you do your job well, you're super prepared. I think this is true of any industry. And then you go, all right, I'll join the line of people who didn't get the job because there are so many more people who didn't get it than the person who got it. So it's like kind of, that was a challenge at first, but there's like a real, camaraderie in that, I think, of going like, there's a lot of actors who don't get jobs and there are a lot of people who don't get the job interviews that they go on. So just like sharing it, I think is important.
I absolutely love that. Just laugh it off and realize that you're not alone, because I think sometimes a part of rejection is that we feel like there's something wrong with us and like, we're the odd one out, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. But realizing it's like I'm actually in the majority of people who didn't get this job or didn't get this role or whatever it is, and that's okay. I'm not lonely. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just that they weren't like looking for me, and there's something better out there for me that's more suitable to the person I am or the values I hold. And I think that that is so important. And the laughter part is essential, I think, in anything in life, realizing that like it's not that deep. At the end of the day, there's going to be another opportunity, and even if it seems like the end of the day, we just have to keep kind of trekking on.
A quote that I love by Walt Disney is, to laugh at oneself is to love oneself. And I feel like I've taken that a lot to heart, because I remember when I was younger, I was like, if someone make kind of like a joke about me to me, I would kind of like take it more personally as like an insult. But now I'm kind of able to like laugh with it kind of and realize that they're not like making a dig at you, unless that's okay not to take the joke if they're like insulting you in like a joke. But if it's just like harmless and funny, it's totally okay to not be insulted and offended.
Yeah, it is. And you're right, there is a distinction between the two, but I'm lucky in that, like, my dad is the best at poking fun at me, but it makes me laugh so hard. Like he and I'm glad that I have that sort of ingrained in me from childhood of like, I love when somebody can kind of make fun of me in a kind and nice way. It's, sometimes I think it's like the mark of someone really likes you and they feel that they can, poke you in the ribs a little bit. I think that's kind of fun. But you're right. It is like a bit of a rolling with the punches thing that I had to learn. And I'm so glad that I did. It makes things so much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that me and Mercedes, it's probably easier for us because we kind of poke at each other a bit.
Yeah. And I also think that's another aspect of the rejection is like, we go through a lot of rejection, but when we go through it together, whether it's for our business or for our podcast, again, it's like that aspect of it's kind of easier to see it's not only about you.
Yeah.
But realizing that like just because you're not like auditioning alongside someone doesn't mean that there's not other people getting that rejection. So you're not alone in that. And as you've acted in so many different shows and films, what's been one of the biggest lessons that you've learned from the experience of acting and being on these sets and the whole thing?
I think what is really amazing, my favorite thing about my career at this point is that most of the work that I book now is because of relationships that I developed sometimes 10 years ago. And that's been the biggest lesson for me, is that it's, I think, the most important in how you show up and what kind of team player you are. It really does matter that, you know what you're doing and that you work hard and, I'm sure talent factors in there somewhere. I don't really know if it does. I think you can certainly, with a lot of hard work and studying the thing that you love, you can find your way in. But for me, most of the work that I do now is because of past relationships. And I take a lot of comfort from that it is so often about the community and how you kind of show up to that community and make yourself part of that. I love that it never feels like it's about me. It's about how I exist in the greater team. And that's been the most important lesson. And it's like the most beautiful thing about the work that I get to do now.
That is so beautiful, 100%. And I think that that's just a great reminder of the fact that being kind and being like generous and thoughtful about how we engage with other people is really so important, not only to our own happiness and to their happiness, but also to like our success and our ambitions and goals. Like there's just so much good to be gained from just being good and like amiable and like putting effort into everything, even if it's like just a friendship. Like if you show up for that person, they're more likely to like show up back for you. And I think that it's just such a beautiful reminder of how far that can really go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a quote that you've said is that the best actors are impeccable storytellers. And aside from acting, do you find that storytelling is important in other aspects of your life? And if so, what are your top tips on how anyone can become a better storyteller?
Oh my goodness, it's such a great question, and I feel so passionate about this because I think storytelling is so important just in our world at large. I think it's how we make sense of the really painful things that are happening in the world right now. You know, it's always been how we've made sense of really difficult things. It's how, you know, we have the great myths from thousands of years ago. And I think, honestly, I say this to young actors, but to young people in general, reading is so important. It's always been so, so important to me. And not like reading on a screen, you know, like picking up a novel, picking up a book of short stories. I think it is so essential. And I feel so effusive about it, of like, we cannot lose this skill of being able to sit down and read for an hour, you know, like I think it is so, so important. But I think I also grew up in a storytelling culture. Like Newfoundlanders they'll stop you on the side of the road and tell you a story every time you see them. So it's always been a very important part of how I interact with people. Like when my other best friend who lives in Newfoundland will call me, and it's like, we will hang on to stories to be able to tell each other. Like we will text each other and say, remind me to tell you. And it's like, because we want to get the entire story experience. We don't want to just read it in a text. It's, you know, it's like, okay, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and I'm going to influence the way you hear this because I want to make you laugh, and I need to make sure to sort of get the punchline in at the right moment. So I think that's been a big influence on me as an actor. But it's really important to me because, as important as directors and actors are and all of that, the key thing is story. And if you have a great script, you know, you're going to make something great. But if you don't, if it hasn't really been put through its paces, if you don't kind of know what needs to change in the main character or the trials and tribulations they're going to face on the way, you don't really have a story yet, you know? So I think that's how we're wired. We are wired to respond to good stories. So I think it's important for everyone to understand.
I love that. You know, it's so powerful, and I think reading is so important. I know that this summer I've been really into reading a lot more, which is definitely an important skill to have, to be able to like have that concentration to like sit for an hour straight just reading. That can definitely be a lot of focus. And I was just wondering, what book are you reading right now, or like what's one of your favorites?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm surrounded by books right now. I have this tripod sitting on a big stack of books. I've been reading a lot of really philosophical stuff lately, but my favorite book, which actually kind of links into one of your questions, is called Sweetland by Michael Crummey, and it's set in Newfoundland, and it's the most magical thing because I got to be in the film adaptation of that book. So I'd read the book like 6 or 7 times before I got to audition for it. So that's like the most magical thing that's happened to me as an actor. I love everything Michael Crummey writes. I love everything that Patti Smith writes. Oh my gosh, what did I just finish? I'm reading a lot of books on writing right now as well. And I'm like, okay, Sarah, maybe read some summary books. I've been reading a lot of George Saunders. I read a lot.
I love that. That is so amazing that you were in the film adaptation for one of your favorite books. How
exciting is that? That's like a full circle moment.
Absolutely. That's so amazing.
And I just wanted to kind of go back to what you said about the storytelling part, because I really do love how you mentioned, like, this has been such an ancient, you know, means of communication from, you know, the ancient civilizations. That's how they passed on stories, and we still have a part of that today, which I love. I love history, and so I love that so much. And I think that it's kind of cool to think about how we can like read and learn about different experiences and gain the empathy for these characters and understand that through the story, and also kind of take that into our own lives when you are trying to, you know, express your feelings or express your emotions or express anything. Having that unique ability to tell a story is such a critical part in connection. And like you and your friends calling, or I know me and my friends will send like voice note messages to each other if we can't catch each other on a phone. Just like realizing the importance that plays in connection.
And I also, what I love about that is when you realize that there's like different, like your life has so many stories. I find that oftentimes when you're like in the thick of like a bad moment or like something really wrong happened, you can kind of like sit back and think, in like 2 weeks from now, this is gonna be a really epic story.
Yes.
Because I know Mercedes and I've experienced that. We're like, wait a minute, this feels bad right now, but once it's over, this is gonna be really great.
Absolutely. That is so wise. That is so wise. I think a lot of people take a very long time in their lives to get to that point of understanding like this too shall pass. And absolutely, we also can't really experience the great highs of life if we don't experience those moments of like, ooh, this is a dark night of the soul moment of the story, you know? So that's amazing that you have that ability to kind of just zoom out for a second and go, this is just a chapter. And it might be really funny in a month, or it might still be painful, but it's still just a chapter. That's, yeah.
It's a chapter, it's not the whole book. I think that is an important one. And so a little bit of a pivot. On the medical drama Remedy, you played a surgeon with OCD, which is a very intense role, and you've tackled suspense and horror in films and played emotionally demanding characters. When you play those types of roles, does it affect you personally, or is it easy to kind of shake that character off once you're finished filming, or do you really need to decompress and recharge?
I definitely need to do some decompressing. I think my bounce back time is getting, becoming a smaller window as I, gain more and more experience in this industry. That role in particular, which I loved, but that was a decade ago now, which is crazy. I was playing that character we did 2 seasons of that show. So I would be in that character for 5 months at a time. And I definitely noticed out in the world that I was actually taking on some of her characteristics, which was really bizarre because I'm not a method actor, so to speak. Like I can joke around and have fun in between takes unless I'm doing something like quite serious and emotionally challenging. And I remember being at a concert. I remember being at a concert at a big sort of indoor pub space or something and finding myself a bit irritated about things that I wouldn't normally be. And I was like, oh my God, this is Mel. This is the character. Like, and it was because it was quite, it asked a lot of me, that job. It was very little sleep. It was a lot of lines. I had to do a lot of surgery. I used to actually like sprint on a treadmill to learn my lines because I had to put my body under stress in order to be able to, they were so difficult that I needed to really get it in my body. I had to like work out hard while I learned the lines, which was kind of a strange, they wrote it into the show. Actually, my character was on a treadmill at one point learning a surgery, which was so fun and like art imitating life, I suppose. But I think things actually affect me a little less now. I loved that character. I loved that show so much, but I find now I'm pretty good at going, okay, that was a wild day on set. You need to like downshift your nervous system now. And I have a lot of tools for doing that. And it involves a lot of outdoor time. Like I said, a lot of nourishing food, a lot of throwing my phone as far away from me as I possibly can. And like really taking that time, a lot of meditation to kind of, and I have to do it. Like I can't trick myself out of it. I actually need to do it or I'll be quite activated and maybe not understand why I am a few days later.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like oftentimes, like with the phone, it's kind of like a fake downtime almost. Like we feel like we're like recharging, but we're really not. And then by the end of like using our phone, it's like, why do I feel like the same afterwards? Like, or like even more kind of like
amped up.
It's definitely not exactly what it seems like. It's a bit of a hidden.
I like how you have so many different tools that you can kind of lean on.
Definitely.
And I think that self-awareness piece is so essential, and that's something I'm definitely trying to incorporate into my life, is like knowing when you need to take a pause and decompress. And even if it's like after a long day of classes or work, or, spending time doing something that you don't love to do, that requires, even if you do enjoy doing it, requires a lot of like energy, mental energy, physical energy, like knowing when to take a break, go outside, maybe eat a nice meal, call a friend. Like, there's just having those tools that you can lean on, and being self-aware enough to know when you need them is something that I think it's a constant juggle, but is definitely important to learn as a teenager.
Yes, absolutely.
In your recent Hallmark movie, Christmas on the Call, the story highlights first responders struggling with loneliness and stress. Was this important for you to be a part of a project that addresses mental health and loneliness?
Oh, yes, because it's so rampant. It breaks my heart. I think it is much more serious than we might even have an idea of, and will probably continue to make itself known in different ways. It really feels essential to me that we treat it, that we give it the respect that and the consideration that it deserves. I know so many people are really hurting and are really lonely, which is what we talked about earlier, of there's a difference between feeling really empowered and feeling a lot of agency in your solitude, or feeling truly like you have no one to go to. That's where it actually becomes very important for someone to try to, help these people in kind of developing a sense of community. I've been listening to, I'm sure you guys have probably talked about it on your podcast, of one of the essentials for elongating life and making sure you have a great quality of life is community and the quality of your relationships. So I feel very strongly about that. And I loved that, it was a Christmas movie, and people have ideas about Christmas movies and that they can sometimes have certain formulas. But the amazing thing about having done a few Hallmark Christmas movies now is to see the evolution of the types of scripts that they are making. And yeah, it felt really important to kind of have a look at like, oh, wow, these people are working on Christmas Day. It's not like, and then they had a big party and the bakery opened and everything was perfect at Christmas. It's like, no, these people are still working and just sort of trying to make sure that they're connecting through the holiday season while they're still doing their best to save people's lives. So that was pretty unique.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's such like a deep subject.
I love so much how the arts, writing, movies, shows can kind of convey such deep, philosophical, meaningful, important, timely messages, like loneliness, like community, like connection. I think that, that's such a digestible way to share that on a widespread note. And so that's why I think that acting and, writing are such important roles in the community, because you can really translate messages for everyone to kind of understand, because everyone, most people watch movies or watch TV. And so I think that's such an important way to reach people. And I agree, that community piece is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, as the statistics show, especially because of the pandemic and social media and all that. And so I think, it's important to, where we can connect with people and really be intentional in spending time with people. And so what has been the most meaningful role that you've acted in?
Probably, other than that character in Remedy, which I loved, and it was probably one of the more challenging roles I've ever had, that part in the Sweetland adaptation, just because I got to play a Newfoundlander. I got to work with my stronger version of my natural accent, which was amazing. And because the book had meant so much to me, I just sort of found myself looking around and thinking, are we just doing this for me, for fun? Is this just a whimsical little dream? No, we're really making this film. It was so special to me. And I've collaborated with that director since, and he's become a good friend of mine. And for me, it's always the meaning really comes, I would say, more from the people and the experience of making the thing than the role itself, usually. So for me, like, I loved the role in Sweetland, but it was definitely more about, I've loved this story for 10 years and now we're making it. It's pretty, there's a magic to that for sure. That kind of affects me more than the character itself, themselves.
Absolutely. That's
love
so
that.
powerful. And I'm very excited about this, but the Vampire Diaries is a very popular TV show among a lot of teens, especially Mercedes and I. Do you have any funny or crazy stories from your time filming the show?
Oh my gosh. I mean, everything was funny and crazy. The whole thing. Like, they were such fun-loving people that I don't even know if I can pinpoint anything. It was just always we were always laughing. There were some shenanigans for sure. I definitely, like early on in shooting, I was like, okay, we've gone to bed late one too many times. Just gonna rein it in a little bit now. But no, everybody was always so much fun on set. It was really, I think, like, sort of to speak to the magic of that thing. Like, I see a lot of those actors at conventions still for the Vampire Diaries, which is so special. And I actually did a film with Daniel Gillies, who plays Elijah, last 2 years ago, and it's coming out this Friday. So, there's lots of crazy little connective tissue like that as well from that show that continues on in my life, which is really beautiful.
Do you want to have the easiest hack to more happiness and wellness in your daily life? One of Anastasia and I's favorite ways to bring a little bit of calm to every and any day is with the app Waking Up. It's filled with a bunch of different meditations, from sleep meditations to morning meditations and anything in between. And the best part is, Waking Up also educates you on the simple reasons why meditation is so impactful. And there's a lot of shocking and really, really cool info on there. You can get started on your wellness journey or gift it to someone in your life, even a teen, because I know how hard we can be to shop for sometimes. So sign up now using the link in our show notes to save $30 off your first year of Waking Up subscription.
Now let's get back into the episode. That's amazing. Again, you built such a great community with those actors and the people who worked on that.
That's so cool. I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, it's scary though. It's it's pretty freaky, but it was an amazing time. It's called Shaman.
Oh,
awesome.
Cool.
Well, great for Halloween. So
yes.
That's coming up.
There you go.
For any teen who is interested in someday going into acting, what's the first step that you would advise them to take?
Acting class. 100,000%. A really good acting class, which I've remained in my adult life. Like, it's always felt really important for me because yes, I'm learning and I'm working on difficult material, and it's making me think about things constantly and to, sort of build all these tools that I use when I start to break down. Like, if I'm handed a full script and it's like, here you go, learn this entire feature film. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that I have a process that I've learned, that's all important. But I think it's also really essential that young actors surround themselves with other young actors who are willing to study and to read great plays and to, improvise with each other. And I think all of those things are so, so important. So I think just like a learning environment and a playful learning environment is really, really important.
I love it. I love it so much. And I also, I love the idea of surrounding yourself with people, especially around your age, that are interested in the same things that you are, like acting. I think that for teenagers, a very lonely time. At all ages, there's a lot of loneliness, but especially for teens who are just kind of learning more about who you are as a person, being around people who are similar to you in that sense is so powerful and encouraging, and just like kind of encourages you to step into who you are and like not hold back. And I think that is so magical and a great way to build that community that we've really been talking about today. So I agree. Such a great idea.
Oh my goodness. Like, I have friends here in Vancouver who are in the film industry and the comedy industry that I met when I was 14 at Red Deer College when I would go to Arts Trek in Alberta. And that was like, a theater, and I would look forward to it so much all year long. And I loved it so much that I think I snuck in for a 5th year. Like, I think I was slightly too old and I still got them to accept me because that's how much I loved it. I was such a nerd about it. But it's amazing to look back at how much that influenced us and to watch these other actors in their success and their like stand-up comedy and their improv comedy, and to go like, oh, there's a lot of roots in that, in the community that we developed when we were like 14, 15 years old, you know, like that really carries through. So yeah, it's I think it's so important, like you said, like that like-minded thing, you can like really encourage each other, and it's great.
That's so amazing. And like looking for places to go, not just being like, I'm going to do a private lesson so I don't really meet anyone, but like looking for places and like conventions and things that you can do so that you can meet, again, those like-minded people, so then you can build that community.
Totally.
As a fun question, what is your dream role?
Oh, it's such a good question, but I feel like I've sort of played my dream role in that book adaptation. You know what I love about being an actor? I love being surprised by the ways in which people want to cast me. Like I played a wrestler a few years ago in a horror film, and it was so fun, but I was like, really? I didn't think anybody would ever think of me to play a wrestler, and in the 80s, no less, with like a really great, crazy wardrobe. And, you know, it was so fun. So I love being surprised by what I can bring to an audition and go, this is my version of this. And B, how people are willing to maybe flip their brains upside down and go, yeah, you would fit this role really well. So I love not seeing what's coming.
That's so cool.
That's amazing.
I love it. And so what is one piece of advice, Sara, that you wish you could give to your teenage self?
I think to not take things so personally, like we were just talking about. I was very sensitive, and I hated that I was so sensitive. I couldn't stand it. And now I'm like, that's how I make my living, is being really sensitive. You know, I would beat myself up about it. And it's like, no, don't. That's amazing that you're able to kind of really be empathetic and to be so sensitive to the world, because that has helped me as an actor. But I think, yeah, I would have just tried to tell myself to roll with those punches a little more, and to just go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks or what they say. As long as you feel good in yourself, that's all that matters.
I love that. I feel like sometimes, though, it's like our biggest superpower can sometimes be like our biggest weakness. So it's like very difficult sometimes, because it's like, you know, feels really bad right now, but in the future, it's like, this is so amazing. Like, I have needed this.
Yeah.
Which I think is so powerful. And what do you do every day that brings you a small bit of happiness?
I really love mornings, and I usually have to sleep, especially in the summertime. I have a lot of really loud crows outside of my building, so I will usually sleep with the window shut and a fan going. But I love first thing in the morning, opening the window and like taking the most dramatic breath of fresh air. Because I'm really lucky. I live in Vancouver, where, you know, unless there's smoke from wildfires like we deal with in Canada in the summer, sometimes it's like the air quality here is beautiful and it smells so good. And that always like really wakes me up and makes me feel like, oh yeah, I'm so fortunate to live where I live. And then I just, you know, I like to have a quiet kind of meditative morning, and that really sets me up for my day. But that like throwing the window open, sometimes I scare people outside because it's loud and they're like, whoa, my big dramatic wake up moment.
That is hilarious. And I love the mornings as well. It's like a slow time to get ahead on your day, get a head start, get going, and set the tone for the day. And I think that's so magical. I love Vancouver. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous spot.
Amazing.
So I'm very excited for that. And do you have a motivational quote you love and remember? And if so, why?
I was thinking about that this morning, and there are so many quotes that I love, but I don't really repeat them to myself. I loved what you said earlier about rejection. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to remember that for myself. But it's more, I think for me, I have these little mantra kind of concepts. Like if I stop and take a really deep breath and I'm just breathing, it always makes me feel better. Always. Like it's wild. I'm just like, oh, I feel more here on the planet. So there's that. And if I ever feel stuck, like particularly if a lot of things need to get done and I'm like just feeling kind of sluggish, I just tell myself forward motion, and then it gets done. I'm just like, okay, just forward, just keep moving forward. And I find that really helps me.
I love that so much.
Those little reminders or little things that we do make such an impact. So thank you for sharing those, because I agree, sometimes you just need a little pause, little reminder, a little breath, and just keep on going. I love it. Yeah. And so, Sara, is there anywhere, where would be the best place for our listeners to find you, to keep up and to learn more?
Just Instagram. That's the only thing in the internet netherworld that I am still on, is so it's just at Sara Canning. Super easy to find me. I'm there sometimes. I'm very strict about my phone usage, but I am there sometimes.
That's
amazing.
Good. I love that. And so thank you so much for joining us today, for telling us about all your incredible experiences and about your upcoming movie. That's so exciting.
We're very excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to talk with you both. You're so well spoken, and I love the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, and thank you so much to Sara for joining us today.
I am such a fan of her work, and so speaking with Sara was truly such a cool time. I just love her, and I love her message. What was your biggest takeaway, Anastasia?
I think my biggest takeaway is that community is so important, and we really need to prioritize, spending time with loved ones, but also reframing that kind of mindset. Like, when we're alone, we don't have to be lonely. We can just enjoy having a little bit of solitude. How about you?
100%. One of my biggest takeaways is the importance of not taking things personally, whether it's in school, in relationships, in auditions, interviews. Don't take things personally. If you don't get accepted to something, or you don't land the role or the job that you wanted, it's not because you're not good enough. It's because you just don't fit the role or the mold that they're looking for. And like I said, and I love to remind myself of all the time, rejection is just a redirection. If you enjoyed this interview with Sara Canning, we think you would love our conversation with Rachel Lee Cook, the star in He's All That and She's All That. With Rachel, we talk all about growing up in the public eye because she started acting as a teenager, hacks for staying true to oneself, and her favorite memories of being on set at these iconic rom-coms.
If you're not failing, you're not growing fast enough. It means you probably peaked in kindergarten. You should be falling down. If you feel like you are even succeeding through effort, it's not a complete disaster 70% of the time. Isn't that pretty great?
You can listen to our conversation now with Rachel. It's linked in our show notes.
If you enjoyed this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, please give us a 5-star review from wherever you're listening. It really helps us out, and it helps other people to know that Hack Your Happiness is a great podcast to tune into as well.
Also, be sure to bring us a small bit of happiness by following this podcast on whichever podcast listening platform you're on now. It's completely free, and it truly helps us keep going and keep improving Hack Your Happiness with each and every passing week. So thank you so much.
See you next time.